What's up, guys? Today I wanted to have another chill, laid back, structured stream, and I went online and looked up true or false questions, but instead I found a link to some kind of debate website with like questions in it. And I glanced at them and I thought that they were really good questions. So I decided that I would roll with that today. And then maybe another time I'll create my usual content that I used to stream about ages ago. But it's just not a good week for me, a good day for me. So I just thought, let me just follow some kind of a structure so that this can be a bit more successful as opposed to me just dwelling on the stuff that's been like out of control lately. So, anyway, let's get started. So, the first question, and by the way, the link to the questions that I will be answering is in the description. The first question is: breakfast is the most important meal of the day. For me personally, I want to say that's true, but at the same time, as true as I believe it to be, I cannot say that I respect it religiously, only because breakfast seems to be my weakest meal. It tends to be sugary, very small, and definitely lacking nutrition. Also, when I was younger, I did not believe in having breakfast at all. Like, I would show up to school without any breakfast, and that all changed when I started going into work when I was new at like 6 a.m. and I didn't have anything to eat. And then by 7 o'clock, I was fainting. Like, I physically would pass the fuck out from not eating. So I just got too old to be able to get away with not eating breakfast. So that is why I say definitely respect breakfast, because it is the meal that makes a difference between you functioning or not. And it's the first thing that you should take care of when it comes to preparing your body for the day. And you're supposed to eat as a means for fuel. So if you don't establish a good breakfast pattern, then you're setting your body up for failure when it comes to like energy and possibly even your mood and reparation. Like, if you get injured or something, your recovery time just takes longer. So why not plant the good seed for a good start of the day so that by the end of the day you are reaping the benefits from it? That's the way I look at it now. Although I still do not have the most hearty of breakfasts. The next question is: swimming in the ocean is better than swimming in the pool. So, for this one, I think it's true only because it's nice to expose yourself to the ocean environment, its elements, its minerals, anything recurring in the ocean. I think swimming in the ocean is very healthy because I grew up by the beach. I was born by the beach. And I vividly remember my grandparents taking me to the beach anytime I was catching something, anytime I was getting sick or something. They would just take me there and literally dump me into the water. And that would just clear me up. It helped with my allergy issues, with my asthma issues. I'm not saying that this is like backed by science or that this is medicine that's proven to work or whatnot, but it makes sense because you guys know how we use the neti pot and these other things to like try to decongest you. Well, the ocean does that, except differently. And in addition, my dad used to say that one of the best things about the ocean is swimming in it when you're not wearing goggles, because it helps to like do something to your face. And I guess it comes from the salt in the ocean. Like, it supposedly helps your eyes or something. And it doesn't make sense always because I think the salt makes your eyes hurt. But at the same time, it does serve as cleansing properties. We use a lot of scrubbing agents like maybe sugar or something for exfoliating your skin. So, who's to say that the ocean does not act as a natural exfoliator? So, I certainly believe in that. However, I personally do not like the ocean very much these days for swimming. More so if I cannot see the like clarity in water because I have had bad experiences lately anytime I go to the beach and the visibility on it is really bad. I actually got hurt one time. I hit something that was under the water. Maybe it was a turtle or a rock, and I busted my knee pretty bad. But but anyway, I think that realistically, the ocean is better for you. But my personal preference is the pool because I don't have to deal with the sand. And I also don't have to deal with any dangers that may lurk in the ocean water, you know? Not that I'm scared of sharks, I've never seen one, but I feel like the way for me to enjoy the beach is if it's not congested, and it's very difficult to find isolated beaches. Let's see, someone left me a comment. I put a stupid cover on my phone now, and it reacts to touch when it wants to. So bear with me. I rarely eat breakfast and I love the ocean. I used to be that person who got away with not eating breakfast, but I'm telling you, I cannot do that now. Unless I am off, like today, I didn't have breakfast until maybe 2 hours after I was awake. And sometimes I try to go as long as possible without eating to sort of fast for the purposes of detox for a little bit because sometimes I am so full from my previous meals that until that gets broken down completely, I don't want to keep eating because I realize that my body is just different with the way it handles that type of thing. And I always feel like I have to stick to a schedule when it comes to eating. And that's been doing more harm than good in some instances, given that my work schedule is pretty merciless. So I need to make some adjustments here and there and not be afraid of not having a routine. And that's something I'm not used to. So I feel like I was poisoning myself without knowing it. The third question is alcohol should be illegal. This is one of those questions that it's easy for me to say heck yeah because I don't drink it. Like when I turned 21, I didn't have a drink until I was like 21 and a week old, and I bought it only because I wanted to have the experience of purchasing something alcoholic for the first time. But I just do not have the taste for that. I don't have the interest for it. I don't have the taste for it. I don't like it. I don't care for it. It doesn't bring me any joy. But because of the effects that alcohol has in the body when it's not regulated or controlled, I think it should be. It shouldn't be outright illegal, but I think it should be regulated. But how do you keep tabs on people when it comes to that, when it's such a heavy part of our culture and we just don't have the manpower to hold everyone accountable for it? So honestly, I think that we should just, since everything is going digital, we should be able to find a way to block people from purchasing more than one drink per week. Shit, per month, maybe. Be like, oh, we recognize this person. This person is registered as someone who has bought alcohol before. You know, like when you run your card or something, all of your cards have your name and last name in it. So it should know who you are. So if somehow we could enable that kind of invasive technology, that's going to cause a lot of issues on the political spectrum, I think that would be the way to ensure that this doesn't get abused. But to answer the question, I would be happy if it were illegal just because I don't see the benefits for it. It's the present, and a lot of people do stupid things when they abuse it. You tend to still get on a car and drive even though you're not physically fit for it, but you're still under the belief that nothing can happen to you. But then something does happen, and not only do you ruin your life, but you have the potential of ruining somebody else's life. And, apologizing or trying to make it right after that doesn't make any sense to me when you made a dumb decision. So, how about if we can make sure that such a thing doesn't happen at all? But yeah, I guess the final answer would be like, I don't care. But when I think about the consequences, I do think that it could use some, at the very least, regulation. And if you cannot regulate it, or if you keep seeing that people aren't responsible consuming it, then fucking ban that. Like, not even pregnant women can have it. What benefits are there to it? But anyway, you would need to convince me that this thing has benefits. Children should provide room and board for aging parents. Now, this one is going to get a little bit contradictory, so I'm gonna do my best to like give a definitive answer. But when I think about it critically, you might think, well, your parents were there for you when you were little. You were their responsibility. They provided you with everything they could, plus. So, therefore, you should pay it forward. And what better way to pay it forward than making sure that when they get old, they're comfortable? But I don't know if this happens everywhere or if you guys have seen this, but I live in a city that seems to be a retirement kind of city. So I see a lot of old ass people. And let me tell you, I find that people are really postponing becoming parents until they are older. I'm talking about 45, 46, 47. You're like really pushing it when it comes to the having children department. And I have even known of one person who had a child and she was like 50 or maybe a little over 50. I understand why these people are postponing having kids. Having kids is honestly not fun. It's not cool. It really changes your life. And not everyone is prepared for this day and age. Let's face it, it's not easy unless you have certain privileges and advantages naturally going for you. And if you don't, oftentimes you end up somehow getting an opportunity that the average person just doesn't get consistently. But because people are postponing becoming parents until they're much older, that has its own sets of consequences. Because when you get older, your energy level is not the same, your patience is not the same, your willingness to participate in certain things is not the same. So I am concerned that if you're an older person becoming a parent, you may rely on the fact that you postpone becoming a parent so that you can have resources. But then, as opposed to investing yourself, raising your kids, you may rely on other people to help you or do it for you. But maybe if you grow your resources is so that you can sort of retire so that you can be a full-time parent. Whereas if you're younger and you're building yourself, you cannot be a full-time parent given those circumstances. But my biggest concern is that there is too much of a wide gap between you and your children when it comes to age. And the times change. And if you're someone who does not religiously keep up with the trends, keep up with the times, keep up with the changes, how can you possibly best assist your children when you don't understand what their present day is? You are only understanding your present day from your perspective as someone who is out of school, someone who is developed in society, someone who is accomplished. But how could you possibly instill how to survive on a child when you have such a wide age gap? So I'm not saying that you are doomed to be a bad parent, but I'm just saying that there is so much that you just don't understand, so much that you just don't get because it's been a long time since you were in school, since you were a child yourself. So, how do you know how, especially technology, modern day technology, really impacts your child psychologically? So I think that ideally, the age gap between kids and parents should be like a parent should be no older than 35. But who am I to say that that's right? You know, it's just what I think based off how the times tend to change. And I don't know about you, but we live in a very hurried society. So, with that said, I think that children should not have to do that because what if my parents are like 45 years old and I'm 5 years old? And by the time I'm 15, they're going to be 60. By the time I'm 25, they're going to be like what, 70, 75, so on and so forth. How is that fair for me? I'm just getting started, I'm just building up. So this question does not take into account the age gap, I guess. So that's why I have to bring it up, because being a parent when you're like 25, and by the time that you yourself are 30, your parents would be like 55 or so, you know, like that gives you a better edge at preparing for such a thing. And ideally, your parents have dedicated their lives to set themselves up well financially to where they can have resources to assist themselves as opposed to relying on you. But again, when you're someone who's building their own future, you're building your own resources and you have your own family that you're trying to start and things like that. How is that fair? You have to juggle your children and on top of that, your aging parents. Just how is that fair? That is the biggest question that I have. So, in conclusion, you are not married to your parents. I don't think you need to give them room and board, but I think it's your responsibility to ensure that you at least monitor them. Like if they are developing social issues, physical issues, start making plans, make them aware about your observations and be like, hey, I'm noticing that physically you're experiencing certain declines. How about if you live in a 1-story home as opposed to a 3-story home? Something like that. But honestly, I really don't think that should be the responsibility of their children, because children, like children as in not kids, but like adult children, they got their own stuff to worry about. And I don't think it's fair that you are already an overwhelmed, stressed out adult with your own kids, maybe. And some people may decide that, well, if the responsibility of taking care of my parents is going to rest on me, then I have to postpone becoming a parent myself. How is that fair? And I just think that it's something that everyone should individually plan for. You will get old, so make sure that you have your resources so that it doesn't affect your descendants. I think that is the most noble thing in this situation. I'm not saying that's the right thing to do, but I'm just saying that from my perspective, it doesn't make sense to me to be taking care of my parents, you know. I'm not saying it cannot be done, but I don't think it's ideal. Uh, Alcohol helps me get girls, talk to girls easier. You know, mom told me a story that when my father went to talk to my grandfather about, you know, like my mom and whatnot, making a move on my mom, that he had a drink to, I guess, help himself, knock himself out. And then that helped him build the courage to go talk to my grandfather. Because my grandfather, he wasn't a monster, but we're talking about his baby girl, right? So like he was very territorial with my mom. So I guess my dad, as sort of motivation, he decided to have like a drink before going to my grandfather. So I believe that. If your parents are not in good health, it may be too hard to care for them on your own. Side note, my niece just had twins last week. Oh, that's nice. You know, it's interesting that you mentioned twins because I keep having this recurring thought of what would life have been like having a twin. Given that I'm someone who I like to play jokes on people and prank people and stuff, it would be so amazing to have a twin to like shift the blame on each other, you know, do mischievous things like that. But but yeah, when it comes to parents, that too, what guarantees me that my parents' only issue is going to be housing? But in this country, that's so merciless. You know, do you have a good health plan? And why is that something that should be my responsibility? If I don't get to inherit much from you, why should I be cursed with inheriting your bills? I'm not saying you don't deserve to be well or taken care of, but again, things like that, medical bills of aging people who just don't make it, that tends to haunt some people for generations. And for me, it's easier to focus on it from my current perspective, given that I'm not someone who is by any stretch of the imagination set financially in any way. I'm actually quite scared for my future when it comes to things like that. But I just know for a fact that keeping someone alive, if you're relying on doctors in this country, is definitely merciless. And it shouldn't have to be that way at all, but it's just the politics of the land. Until that changes, we're cursed to be that way. And I think it's really messed up. I have my own opinion as to why things stay that way, but I really don't want to shift the conversation into that. Maybe I'll do a separate video on it. But seriously though, I at some point you have to make decisions that take into account your well-being, your own personal well-being. It does matter. But there are people out there who are going to try to convince you that you have the moral and ethical and religious and spiritual, all those things, social responsibility to be there for your parents. But then if I were to do all that, who's going to be there for me? Because you're going to tell me that I made bad decisions anyway. So I feel like it's a lose-lose situation. And again, it's not fair. I think that needs to be better addressed. But in the end, I think it is not your responsibility because again, you're not married to your parents. But but anyway, that's just my opinion on that one. I have to think about it a little more. Because, I mean, your parents do deserve some comfort. Everybody deserves comfort and peace and whatnot. But at the same time, providing that has consequences. And that's what I would like to examine. How is that going to be taken care of? The next question is studying grammar is more important than practicing conversation skills. Now, this one is one of those things that also seems to contradict itself because I believe that you need to have an understanding and dominance of grammar if you hope to have good conversational skills, though I understand that a conversation that happens immediately in real time is more challenging than sitting down, writing something with no time limit. You can start a thought, you can end it there. No one is waiting for a response. You can go have tea or something, come back to it, and your thought is still waiting for you, and you can continue. But again, I honestly speak about the same as I sound when I'm writing, minus the ums and the stutters and stuff like that. But again, I really do think that it's like music. Let's take music for example. If you understand music theory, you are more than likely to be able to have an easier time breaking down certain songs, learning them, learning how instruments are coming together to like produce this sound, understand the relationship from note to note, things like that. But that's you understanding the music theory. Understanding music theory will not make you a good guitarist, a good pianist, a good vocalist. You actually have to train that. I keep telling my brother says that he wants to be a musician, like on the side. That's one hobby that he wants to have, but he wants to take it seriously. I tell him, do like me. I taught myself how to play the piano. And he says, I want to be a real musician, not a musician by ear. And I said, I understand. I took two music theory classes, and I cannot say that I retained all of the things that I learned from it. Well, I cannot say I learned it if I didn't retain it, but I cannot say that I was able to retain the lessons from that. I cannot write music. I do not have sight reading skills, but I am very confident in what I can do when it comes to music. I know how to label the notes on the manuscript paper. I know what the different clefs are. I know the time signatures and things like that. But I keep telling him that if he wants to learn how to play the piano, he needs to train himself with the physical aspect of playing the piano, because it took me forever to be able to have my left hand doing something while my left hand is doing something else at the same time. And that is something that the older you get, it doesn't get any easier. So I would like to see him at least start developing the physical technique, the physical aspects of stimulating your brain to be able to perform a certain task with one hand and then something completely different with another hand, because you cannot mirror both hands. And I also need to practice doing the stuff that I can do with my left hand with my right hand, because there's stuff that I cannot do with my right hand that my left hand can do, and vice versa. So with my brother, though, he knows nothing about how to play an instrument. At least I have a little bit of technique, I have a little bit of practice, I have some of the basics done. I don't always apply them, but at least I have pretty much taken care of that. But he wants to learn the theory first, which again, there's nothing wrong with that. But I think that the most effective way to execute music is to either learn the theory and the instrument simultaneously, or at least get familiar with the instrument so that when you start studying the theory, you understand why you're doing the things that you're doing with the instrument. But anyway, so with that said, I think that studying grammar is like the theory aspect of language and communication. So if you are a good reader, I think a good reader and writer, I think that will translate into conversation skills. For me personally, my challenge with conversation is that I don't converse very often. So I actually can go days, if I have consecutive days off, I can actually go days being quiet, not saying anything, not singing anything. So because I have not performed the act of speaking, it's like my mouth and my vocal cords are like muscles that need to be reawakened, muscles that need to be warmed up again. I stutter a lot. I get tongue twisted a lot. My throat feels heavier. It feels like speaking feels like effort pretty much. But at the same time, it doesn't mean that my comprehension is bad. It doesn't mean that I'm not a good writer. I feel like I honestly write more than I actually physically speak these days. I have more deep, full blown conversations in written form than in verbal form. Nobody ever complains that I'm miscommunicating or hard to understand or anything with my written form. With my spoken form, I feel like since I tend to be very soft spoken and in I'm surrounded by a lot of noise in the environments where I have my social time, such as work. I don't think that is me lacking conversation skills. It's just that physically I need to be mindful that my natural tone doesn't help me. But I feel like I'm able to translate the way that I communicate in written form into spoken form. Again, minus the occasional stutters and tongue twists. But I feel like if I did not have good, strong grammar skills, I would not be able to have the conversations that I have. I will always say I am a better writer than I am a speaker. But I feel like when the moment of truth comes and I have to speak and not have a script, not have any kind of preparedness whatsoever, like be on the spot, teach somebody, speak to a crowd, this and that, I can do it. I can absolutely do it with little to no prep time. So I really think that studying grammar is more important than practicing conversation skills. But I'm not saying neglect your conversation skills. You still need to practice that. There are lessons that will come in conversation form before they arrive in grammar form. But I really, really, really do believe that if you have strong grammar skills, then that will naturally translate into good conversation skills. Television is the leading cause of violence in today's society. I don't think so. I think that television is a consequence of the shifting in our culture. So, to put that into a more complete thought, I think that parents are no longer investing their own personal physical time with their with their kids. Like good quality time is pretty much over. Now the television is doing the raising, doing the babysitting. There's nothing wrong with the television itself as an object. The content of the television is what's the problem. But the problem with the content presented in TV is that if you are a child, for instance, who is developing violent tendencies because you get your ideas from television, it's because you are lacking coaching. You are lacking the involvement of an adult who has an understanding of what's going on and guiding you through processing that kind of material. I used to watch things when I was little that were deemed for like more mature audiences, but my mom would always instruct me and be like, hey, you're getting ready to see certain things. You're getting ready to see things that are violent. You're getting ready to hear things that are not nice, things that are rude, and things that you really shouldn't say. Just make sure that if you expose yourself to these things outside of TV. This is how you should react to it. And whatever you do, don't be the person who inflicts this type of thing, who performs this type of thing. So I really don't think that the TV and its content it's bad. I think what's bad is you're leaving vulnerable people unattended, exposing themselves to those contents, to that kind of content. Now, when it comes to adults who may be influenced by television, again, same thing. Maybe this is a broken ass adult who never had any guidance and still are by themselves and they look at TV as a way to escape from their reality, whatever challenges may be associated with their reality. And they just get ideas from TV and they think, well, what I see on television gave the people in television this kind of result. They're thinking about the end of it, the result. But they don't think about the consequences. They don't think about the fact that the results that you see in TV are scripted, whereas real life is not scripted. So again, I know that and I can talk about that and say that because I had guidance. I was told, hey, just because this person got mad and they were able to wreck some shit doesn't mean that in real life, when you get mad, stuff is going to work out that way. This is why you need to be careful about how you react to things. Again, that can be achieved if you have a coach, if you have a mentor of some sort guiding you with this type of thing. It may seem silly, like, wow, I really need to be babysat through watching television. Yeah, why not? Because television is biased. Television has its like consequences. There's people who are trying to send a message to you, trying to persuade you to do things like vote a certain way, spend your money a certain way. The people behind the screen do not have your best interest in mind. Until you become aware of that and are able to retain that, you cannot be trusted with independently consuming television. So that's my opinion. Again, I don't think that TV itself is bad. I watch violent things all the time. I find it entertaining. I find it cool. I find it disturbing and oh, all those things. But am I a violent person? Am I a criminal? Am I in trouble? Do people hate me? Do people avoid me? No. But the way I achieved that was through coaching, preferably at an early age. But I don't think it's too late to help anybody to become better at that. Next question is dogs are better companions than cats. The classic dogs versus cats question. So, in my personal experience, the few dogs that I have had, unfortunately, were not dogs that I got to enjoy to the fullest. I didn't really get to walk any of them because I was like I was a little girl, like very little. I didn't really get to train them to perform tricks, to follow commands or anything. The dogs that we had were pretty much foster them for a little bit and then they leave. Make sure that you feed them, make sure that you give them shelter. But it's not like I was actually establishing a relationship, creating a bond with this creature. It was more of a temporary thing. But what I do know about dogs is that for my kind of personality, they would be the most matching, the most appropriate, the better match for me. But dogs, I think, are more complex with what they can achieve. And I feel like when it comes to your emotional state, I feel like they can be more supportive. I feel like they have a broader range with what you can train them to do for you. Like, there are people who legitimately have pets because of health problems, like diabetics. There is a way for you to train certain dogs to be able to detect that a medical emergency is coming. Can we train cats to do such a thing? And cats, of course, have their own little advantages going for them. I really think it depends on what your goal is when it comes to you choosing your pet. What are you hoping to achieve? Why are you going for this pet? If you're looking for something that's simpler, easy, very flexible, more independent, less demanding of your attention, I think you should go for a cat. But if you're looking for a more fulfilling experience, and you really want for like your house to be better protected or something like that, or you want to be alerted of certain things, I think the dog is the best choice for you. I also think that dogs help you to be better at fitness because, for instance, they need to be walked much more often. And and depending on the breed that you get as well, some of them are really demanding. So while you're taking care of your pet, you're also taking care of yourself. Whereas the cat, it tends to be a more like independent creature. They need attention, don't get me wrong, but it's not as demanding. Whereas dogs, I feel like dogs are more worthwhile and fulfilling, but at the same time, you need to understand what the benefits of a cat are in order for you to settle for a cat. And you just do not expect to treat a cat like a dog and have good things happen, you know? Should Ebonics be allowed in schools? Seems like bad grammar to me. TV should be viewed in moderation. I agree. I think everything in life should be in moderation. But unfortunately, the average person is not thinking like that because that takes discipline. That is something that the earlier you become aware of that and accept it, the better. But the culture around here seems to be you can do whatever, whenever, however much, as long as you can afford it, as long as it's in your face, as long as you can reach it. It gives you some kind of entitlement, and some people do not realize that entitlement can be pretty harmful. But what can I say? That's a complete different matter there. But absolutely, I think that the best way to achieve moderation is to have discipline. And unfortunately, discipline is not something that we seem to really focus on. And that's why we suffer the consequences. Dogs appear more lovable than cats. You know what? I feel like that is, it's true if you have an inclination for what you consider to be displays of love. And let me explain. It's because the way that cats express their love and appreciation and things, it's not in the same manner that dogs do it. Dogs definitely, it's like you can see it in their faces. They are just really energetic creatures. They like to speak with their entire body, and they have all these gestures that we look at, and our human interpretation of emotions, it seems to be best carried by the dog, but the cat just has its own way of expressing it. And it also doesn't help that a cat's psychology is just different. And I guess the cat hasn't been domesticated for quite as long as dogs have. Maybe I'm totally wrong on that, but I feel like the cat used to be in the wild. They really used to have their symbol. They used to have a different meaning. They used to be the hunters, and they were like feared creatures because of how much power they exerted in the wild. But now we started domesticated them, and I guess we're still understanding how they show their emotions. I feel like, put it this way, it's like a man and a woman. Men really don't talk very much, especially about their emotions. At least I have yet to meet a guy who voluntarily seeds that information without me having to dig into it, peeling layer after layer. Whereas a woman, it's very easy for her to just start talking, not have an end, tell you everything in one shot. That doesn't mean that a woman is superior when it comes to how she processes emotions and expresses them and whatnot. It's just that men do so differently. Men like to show love and care with action as opposed to words. And if you're someone who needs to be, what can I say? If you need to be constantly reminded of that, ensured those things, if you're like experiencing issues with your self-esteem and you need constant validation, then maybe it's not a good time for you to have a relationship. But when it comes with cats, when it comes to cat, that's the way I look at them. I look at it as, if I'm not ready to have a pet that has its own weird, strange, fucked up ways of displaying love and respect toward me, maybe I shouldn't get them. Maybe I should go for the dog. But there could also be some dogs that are timid, but just because the dog is timid doesn't mean it doesn't have its loving tendencies. So really, I think it's the whole dogs versus cat thing really comes from a misinterpretation of two absolutely different breeds, different species. Somehow we are comparing them. And I want to understand why. I think the better question would be, is a Siberian Husky better than a German Shepherd? Is a, what can I say, Siamese cat better than a domestic short hair? I think that's a much more fair question than, is a dog better than a cat? Because they're completely different creatures designed for different purposes. But because they tend to be the most popular pets in human culture, I guess, even though we have rabbits and all that stuff, this question, if I could, I would eliminate it from existence. Because, again, since those tend to be the most popular pets, the pets that most people yearn, then this debate emerges. So I really think that a better question would be, which personality benefits better from dogs, or which personality benefits better from cats? Something like that. But do not do a dogs versus cat thing, because it's not fair. The only thing they have in common is they're four-legged, have eyes, have better noses. They do not speak human language, and you know, but they even hunt different things. They survive differently. They behave differently. So anyway, to answer the question, I guess the way I would phrase it is, dogs seem to be more fit for ensuring the survival of a human being. But it doesn't mean that cats are terrible pets. I hope that makes sense. Let me see. I think there was a question in the comments. I hate cats and dogs. And there are people out there who just hate cats and dogs. And there's nothing wrong with that. I personally hate bugs, but bugs is not really something that I have in mind when I go for pets. Some people just cannot stand dogs or cats, and that's perfectly fine, because we're different. Smoking should be allowed in public places. I feel like smoking tends to be allowed more often than not, but I understand that a lot of places now have signs that say no smoking, and a lot of restaurants also tend to be one way, which is absolutely no smoking in the premises. When it comes to this, I opine very similarly to the alcohol issue. I do care a little bit more about the smoking aspect because if you're smoking in an area that I really don't have much places to go, I know that's harmful for my health, and I also have respiratory issues. You are endangering my life, you are harming my health. I think that shouldn't be something that I worry about. I think that smoking should be reserved for your own personal private space. Sometimes I drive behind a car whose driver is smoking, and I have to smell that crap, and I hate it because I like to drive with my windows down when the weather is favorable. But of course, I end up having to roll out my window because someone is smoking. I hate the smell of anything being smoked, like whatever the heck it is that people smoke. I hate it. I hate cigarettes. I hate cigars. I hate absolutely anything that is related to that. So if it were illegal across the board, I would probably be one of the most happiest persons in the planet because it means that I never ever have to worry about that mess again. And sometimes I am walking around and someone happens to blow a stupid cloud of smoke, and I'm like, great, now this shit got on my eyes too. So again, it's one of those things that it has absolutely no benefits, especially if it's cigarettes. Absolutely no benefits. You're just charring your fucking lungs. If that's what you want to do so in private. We don't need to be exposed to that. And especially given that this becomes a public health safety issue, there's people who may not tolerate that stuff very well because some people are sick, some people have respiratory issues. So you are endangering someone. Why is that okay? But I think that smoking should not be allowed in public places or really anywhere except your own house. But but at the same time, I feel like who am I to say that? It's easy for me to say it because I am sensitive to the consequences of cigarettes or whatever the heck gets smoked these days. And again, I don't think it's fair that my environment, our environment, is not guaranteed to be safe and clean for me to transit when I'm out. So we need to come up with something that ensures that no one is endangered from that. And let's say that I am exposed to your secondhand smoke enough to have very negative consequences on my health. Why should I be held accountable for my own medical expenses when it was your fault that I ended up with these issues? Like, say, my grandfather used to be a smoker. If I had lived all my life with him, I have zero doubt in my mind that I would not be enjoying the relative level of health that I have now had I been in that kind of environment. And anytime I would visit him, I would feel it. I had to leave the area for a little bit and sort of gather some fresh air because when I was little, I used to really have the worst asthma. But at least as I got older, it got a little better still. But yeah, I feel like you cannot control how this affects people. So why not be considerate across the board? You know that this thing is bad for you. You know that there's people who can suffer from this. Why would you not practice kindness? If you don't have kindness for yourself, which again, since particularly cigarettes, let's focus on cigarettes, they have absolutely no benefits. Unless you, I guess, create them in your mind by saying, oh, anytime I smoke, I feel like I calm down or something like that. If that's the case, I feel like you need to create better coping patterns, but I don't have a right to tell you that. You go for what works for you. But I really feel like there are better alternatives out there. And I would encourage you to explore those instead, because in the long run, it's going to help you and you'll be healthier and you'll be less dependent on chemicals that are messing with your brain and turning you into a zombie. And this society does not need any more zombies. so so anyway, that's just my humble opinion when it comes to that one. I have always detested cigarettes. The first time I ever smelled one, I don't remember it, but I know that as far as my memory can take me with the smell of stuff getting rolled up and smoked, I have a very unfavorable opinion of those things. Come on, touchscreen. Okay, let's see. I really hate that I added this cover now. No smoking, no problem. Exactly. Weed smells good though. If weed smells like what I think it smells, I know how cigarettes smell, but there's this thing that freaking smells god awful. How can I describe that? Anyway, whatever smell is not cigarettes nor cigars, I hate it. I think it's worse than cigarette smell, but they are equally bad. Just this one has a different level of being unbearable because the smell of cigarettes, of course, it lingers on the person, but the way that the smell of what I presume to be weed fucking smells, it's just terrible, unforgivable. And unfortunately, of course, I know that there's people out there who are going to defend weed because it's supposed to have medicinal properties and whatnot. But I'm thinking, can you really not consume this thing in a way that isn't smoked? Because damn, that really funks up the place. So anyway, just don't do that stuff around me. if you if you're in my presence, just don't voluntarily do that stuff. Now, if for some reason I'm in your house, which if I know you're a smoker, I will go out of my way to avoid, then I won't be there in the first place. But the worst situation for me was I was hanging out with someone and we went to someone's house and they happened to be a smoker. And of course, I had absolutely no control of that situation. And they started smoking a fucking cigar and I hated it so much. I wanted to get up and go. I think I got up and left for like the bathroom, even though I had nothing to do, just to like catch a break. But if it's in my control and I got somewhere to go, I will always desert the area if if smoking is involved. And the best experience I've had with that was I was hanging out at a friend's house and then he had a friend that is actually his roommate. They used to live together. He asked this person, "Hey, you're smoking a little too close to us over here." And then the other guy simply apologized. And my friend was just really aware that I had those issues and I was starting to get congested and kind of like cough and you could hear wheezing in my lungs. And then he asked me, like, what's going on? Are you okay? And I said, well, it's just that I'm having a negative reaction to the cigarette smoke. I didn't initiate the complaint, but this person knew that I had those issues. And on top of that, seeing the physical consequences it was having on me definitely motivated this person to definitely take a stand and be like, hey, do you mind going a little farther away? And, you know, I was taken care of and I like that. I think that's how this situation should be dealt with. I'm not necessarily like a snowflake. I don't feel like I need to be like I'm weak or I need to be considered for everything. But I'm not telling you do not smoke at all. We were just asking you to find perhaps a different spot. And like a good human being that you are, you realize that the planet is pretty big. You went somewhere else without being butthurt about it. And I think that's how it should be. So that is my, I guess, positive experience with a smoker. It was, please respect my space, respect my little piece of air that I borrow so that I can function. Let's see. Maybe there are too many laws. Yep, indeed. Even in your house, smoke is bad for your children. Good point. Does nicotine work? From what I hear, nicotine is very powerful. And most people say that they feel like the nicotine is the thing that keeps them addicted. And it makes sense because I guess nicotine alters your body's chemistry. And once you do that, even if you know that this thing smells like absolute, just the worst smell ever, you cannot help it. You're just shaking for it. You're trembling for it because you're like a lab rat now. You're just addicted. So I think that the fact that cigarettes and all that stuff have those kinds of ingredients and it's become a business and someone is profiting off this is very lamentable. But what can I say? It's something that I know for a fact that with a lot of pride, all the pride that I can possibly have, I know that I will go the rest of my days not ever purchasing a single pack. I have no need for that stuff. And similarly, I'm pretty sure, almost certain, that I will never ever purchase an alcoholic beverage. Not because I think that they're terrible or something, but they just don't bring me any joy. I don't have a care to try them, taste them, sample them. Maybe in a social environment in which someone is like, hey, would you like to taste this? Would you like to try this? Sure, I may have a sip or two, but me voluntarily saying I'm at a restaurant and I'm like, yeah, let me have this fucking, what do they sell at restaurants? Margarita or something. It ain't happening. It's just not my thing. I don't like it. Heads up if you ever have smelled. Wait, heads up if you have ever smelled a skunk, that is what weed smells like. I cannot say I have smelled a skunk, but I guess the weed smell might be what I can imagine the skunk smell to be like. But I'm pretty sure that I have smelled weed because I have been in the presence of people who recognize what weed is. And I remember the first time I ever smelled that, I said, what is that? Is that like an herb or something that's being burnt? Because it smells like something that wants to be a cigarette but just isn't. It's like an immature or mutated cigarette of some sort. And then like years later, that's when someone said, oh yeah, this person was just smoking weed. And I'm like, oh, so that's what weed is. Because sometimes, since this happened to me when I was in middle school, I was thinking, oh, maybe this person is trolling. Maybe this person is kidding. They don't know what they're talking about. But you know, now that I'm old and people mention it like, ugh, we're walking by a pothead, then I'm like, okay, so my childhood stuff has been confirmed. Next question is females are better students than males. Oh boy, here we go with a superiority question again. So in my opinion, I think that the answer to this question is neutral. You can be a good student or a bad student depending on your behavior, depending on how well immersed you are into a topic, depending on your willingness, things like that. But in my most humble, unbiased opinion, based simply on observations that I have made, and hopefully may have a way of corroborating whether it's true or false, like corroborating or debunking. I feel like our society is focusing so much on giving the women an edge that males now are suffering the consequences of the school system being redesigned to favor women. As a result, we are seeing that women are benefiting from this. Women are outperforming males on certain things, but in the grand scheme of things, this is actually an attack on the males, and it is not fair. I think that the way to handle this may be to create some kind of separation for certain things. But at the same time, I don't want to say, yeah, do an all male school, an all female school, and that fixes the problem. Because I had the pleasure of speaking to someone who happened to mention that they went to an all girl school. That was after I expressed that I skipped college. This girl just told me, oh yeah, I went to an all girl school and it was one of the worst times of my life because although she had male teachers on certain subjects, she just says that the environment is just not the same. And I said, see, unfortunately, but fortunately, you should have an all inclusive school because you need to practice studying with a guy. You need to practice working with a guy. You need to practice managing guys in the same manner that you need to practice taking orders from guys. So, how can you possibly achieve this if your post secondary education is biased toward you establishing a better bond with females? But again, I really, 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 really want to say that school is pushing the female agenda too much. And when I was in high school, for instance, I experienced this myself. I felt like I was being given preferential treatment when it comes to assisting me with pursuing stuff like scholarships. I also noticed that the guys who were receiving about the same kind of preferential attention for scholarships were members of the LGBT community. So, nothing wrong with that. But what I am saying is that it's very clear that you have an agenda going on. And I think that this is harmful in the long run because you cannot be helping some people get ahead while you are hurting another group of people. How is that fair? And I know that people out there like to say life is not fair, but when you're making decisions like that, you're taking away from that natural recurring unfairness that life may predispose you to, but you are actively creating circumstances that create unfairness. When you are creating unfairness, you do not have a right to say that life is not fair when you are having a hand at it. So, in conclusion, neither males nor females make better students. I think that you have the responsibility to ensure that you create an environment that allows for learning to take place and that it cultivates learning fairly. You know that men understand better sometimes by action. Like most guys preferred classes that are more, what is it? Shops inclined. And I don't know if this is national, but shop classes are classes that teach you about how to take cars apart, how to build things, electrical classes, those technical things. Whereas girls, we like social classes a little better. We tend to like courses that are less physically involved. Most girls I met always said they liked art, music, English, social studies. I feel like it was neutral. If it was psychology, girls definitely 100% of the time tend to say that they really enjoyed that class. But when it comes to more complex things, like especially the sciences, I feel like I was the oddball. I was that one girl who always said, heck yeah, I'm all for the natural sciences. I want to be a geologist and I want to be out there in the field. That used to be me. And I also had an interest for the arts and stuff. And I had a impractical interest for shop classes. I had curiosity for how does electricity work? How is a car built? How does it work? But just because I had that curiosity does not mean that I care about possessing the skills to have a job at that, doing that, or like I care to know how to fix a car so that when I have my own car, I fix it myself. Not at all. I am just a very curious person. When it comes to an opportunity to learn something, no matter what it is, I never turn that opportunity down. Whether I like it, whether I hate it, whether it's useful for me or not, I don't turn down chances to learn. So it's just the learner, inner, curious person in me that is acting at that moment in time. But to say that females are better learners than males, if that's what you think, it's because you are experiencing the consequences of the restructuring of school that some institutions are really going out of their way to do so that we can have affirmative action. But again, I think that's not fair because now some guys are being set up for failure, and that's not fair. However, I cannot say that I know this from research or that this is proven. Maybe this was just incidental. Maybe the school district that I went to just happened to operate in this manner. And the occasional college article that I may see that talks about females and whatnot, it may be biased, maybe not. But I really, 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 really think that's what may be happening. Because, I mean, it's all over the news, it's all over the trends. Like Father's Day was not even talked about. I didn't see any Father's Day's sales. Whereas for Mother's Day, it was all over. And what can I say? I can see those differences. And I don't think that's right. But anyways, you guys, that's just my opinion again, as humbly as possible. And in the end, to answer this question, I think neither learns better than the other. You have your stuff that you are good at, and we females have the stuff that we are good at. There's some stuff that you guys can do that we cannot do, and vice versa. Focus on that as opposed to creating a competition where one cannot exist. Just like earlier I said about dogs versus cat. Why are you comparing two different fucking breeds? Just in that case, try to imagine very briefly that men and women are two different breeds. We're just different. We're from the same species, from the same, class in the animal kingdom, but we have our differences. Let's focus and accept the fact that those differences exist, understand the reason, and move forward as opposed to acting in resentment about it. I think that would be the best way about it. So, before I leave this question, what solution would I offer for this? I think school should remain inclusive, but I think that teachers, for instance, could be better trained at how to deal with these differences. Like, I remember reading something a long time ago that guys tend to learn better if the classroom is colder, whereas girls don't learn as well when the classroom is colder. That has a solution, which is girls fucking dress up, wear a jacket, wear long pants, and then the guys can wear their t-shirts and shorts. If that's what it takes to create an environment where you can learn just as fine, great. But if you are a diva and you're concerned about what you're wearing more than the material that you're supposed to be gathering from school, then that is a clash of values that you are creating, and that's your problem for you to deal with, not for the rest of us. That's just to name one example. Understand what the differences are and do the best that you can to create a setting in which this doesn't get in the way of both parties being good learners and both parties being given the opportunity to be their very best and what is it have a worthwhile experience. I think it's possible, but I feel like we are living in such a hurried child society, such a hurried, stressful, impatient society that we're thinking, boys don't matter, because they've had the edge since the dawn of time. So let's focus on the girls. Let's make it easier, more fair, better for the girls because the guys, they'll figure it out. And then we have issues with guys that now we're claiming to not have solutions for. Like, although, say, stuff like suicide affects men more, somehow we're still trying to find a way to bring awareness to the fact that female suicide is on the rise, despite their numbers not really being comparable to that of men's. See what I mean? So if you're going to have those disparities, then don't bring up the topic because it will be very easily countered. But anyway, that's just my opinion on that one. I might catch up with the comments and then proceed. Come on, touchscreen. Come on, touchscreen. Okay, so the majority of females will not use their degree, rather opt out for raising children. There's that. I feel like females unfortunately tend to contribute negatively back to society. And what I mean by that is from a financial standpoint. We tend to be the ones who more often than not go for aid, public aid. And we tend to go for jobs that may not necessarily be the best paying ones. And we also need to take more time off and stuff. And we also like to, say, rely on our partners to supply the things we have shortcomings for, which I don't think it's a bad thing. I think the only way it's a bad thing is when you abuse that. Like, say, if you know that your man is the primary breadwinner and you are mediocre at bringing home some of the bacon, do not spend money that isn't yours. Just because you're a couple doesn't entitle you to his resources that he earned. It should be something that makes sense as opposed to indulging in things for the sake of having a better lifestyle. I think that you need to have very clear what the priorities are, and then any surpluses, still be responsible about it. You shouldn't spend all the extra stuff you have just because you have extra stuff. Think about the future. Think about the fact that something can happen to your man. Then what? So, what can I say? I always feel like women do contribute negatively to society from that perspective. And again, that is something that needs to be changed. Maybe, and this would sound very terrible if this became like, if this was on a megaphone, like if my platform here was much more impactful, but maybe create severe consequences for the women who decide to abandon their posts. Like, let's say that you get a very important executive position and it is on par with your degree. Create some kind of sanction for you deciding to leave it. because now the company has to invest resources into finding someone to fill in that role. And that's company resources that you're creating a hole for that you otherwise wouldn't have if you just held on to your job. It's kind of like trading. You have sanctions for certain countries. You have consequences. Like you can have consequences for taking products from here and sending them to another country. We tend to have higher fees, higher taxes, and stuff like that. Whereas other places that ship stuff over here, they don't experience those severe things from their home countries. But what can I say? Just create something that lets people know and understand that their decisions have consequences. I'm not saying create a consequence that absolutely ends somebody if their life changes. I think everybody has a right to start a family and stuff like that. But if you're going to start a family and you expect for the rest of us to somehow make it easier for you for deciding such a thing during a time when that's not the best thing, you should feel the consequences of your poor decisions. So, what can I say? At least I have observed that we tend to, in the name of being careful and I guess politically correct, if you want to call it that, say maybe during the hiring process, you have a guy and you have a girl. The girl may not be as experienced or as physically capable as the guy, but we look at the girl as let's give her a chance because if I know her personally, she has a child. Whereas this guy is single and she hasn't had a job for a little longer and she just recovered from a pregnancy. So let's hire her because she's in more need. I think that's nice because you're helping someone from the community who clearly has a extra necessity. Like their situation is a little more dire, especially if she's single. But at the same time, you are spoiling people because now other women who may be in a similar situation see that they tend to have a privilege in society if they are in a vulnerable state that will encourage more women possibly to keep making those kinds of decisions. Whereas if we allow for people to suffer a little bit of the consequences of it without killing them, of course, then I think that would help society move in a better direction of people making more sound decisions. I don't want to sound like I'm cruel or like I just have some kind of inner hatred for my kind or anything like that. It's just that I am really sick of hearing complaining that isn't justified because you're making bad decisions. Like at some point we were all united. We were all in small villages. We all knew each other. We all could support each other because we set aside the resources to do that. But now that we lived in a more dispersed society, it's just not the same. And I really think that people need to get used to living under those circumstances. So maybe do not make decisions that will set you back. Think it through. And by all means, do not make decisions in an attempt to be manipulative of another person. Like, say, the women who try to have kids with a guy so that you can somehow trap the guy into the relationship. Never has that worked. Like, you create so much animosity and it's just not worth it. But anyway, that's just my opinion on that one. I know I went off on a tangent there, but I think it was worthy of mentioning. Where am I at? What I miss? Garuda. Well, from what I saw, you have been kind of caught up at that. FML, damn it. Okay, I will watch older topics. What is new topic? Leave. I am late AF. I am the worst internet husband ever. Well, fortunately for you, we still have two more pages worth of questions. So I'm still going to be here for a little longer, especially since I like to ramble. That little longer is big longer. Check the link in the description. Right. The questions that I'm reading are in the description. If women start to get more responsibilities, they will become more suicidal. Oh, absolutely. Like, I personally, the older I get, anytime there are more tasks, more duties deposited on my plate, the more intimidated and stressed I get. And I'm like, I cannot handle anything. This is terrible. Life sucks, this and that. So that's why I try to be careful about the decisions that I make. But realistically speaking, there's just some stuff that we're not designed to handle. And I get freaking, this is like a hobby for me, but also it brings the worst out of me when I go on Twitter and then I see all these women talking about. The other day, it was PCOS Awareness Day. And then there were some people, and then, oops, I have a low battery. Then there were some people saying, oh my God, this proves that women are the superior gender simply because we seem to handle a medical condition that nature designed us to be able to handle, except in the rare cases when it turns malignant. But I really disliked it that you were trying to come up with ways to show that women are superior physically, but none of that was compelling. And if you guys give me a second, I am pretty sure that I will not finish this stream before my phone dies. So I'm going to try to very discreetly plug it in. So take this as a little bit of an intermission or what is it? A little break. And unfortunately, that means I might need to hold the phone for the duration of the stream because I don't have anywhere to set it to be near the power outlet. And I think if I rotate it, yeah, it won't rotate. Anyway, I don't mind. So, yeah, it's going to be a little shaky from here, but maybe this helps me with my touchscreen better. Let's see. I have to scroll back. Right. So, yeah, I definitely, the older I get, I am looking for my life to be simpler, not more complicated. So, if we were to be given more serious responsibilities, I don't know what we would do. So, I guess I should be careful about what I say. But again, maybe we need to experience those kinds of hardships so that we learn to be less prideful and actually say things that make sense. Because some women that I read stuff from, they're really prideful, and that concerns me. And at some point, even I was behaving with a lot of pride. And what can I say? It's okay to feel proud about your accomplishments, but to take it to the extreme, such as feel like you're somehow superior to other folks just because of your natural gender, it doesn't make any sense. So I I guess I have that opinion because no man ever comes to me trying to make me feel like I'm inferior just because I'm shorter, or just because I cannot lift as heavy, or just because my tolerance for working, say, longer hours, which is intolerance because I really cannot deal with really long shifts very well. No guy ever comes to me and makes me feel bad about it. The only people ever who have criticized me when I have my moments when I complain that my shift is dragging too long or something are the full-time women. And then I'm like, you made the decision to be full time. Suck it up. I don't want to hear it. If you made the decision to be full time, I don't want to fucking hear that you're in pain, that you feel terrible, that you got all these issues, because that's exactly why I avoided being full time. I kept it real. I examined the environment. I examined the level of work that we do. I examined everything. I thought this through and I said, I have to make a sacrifice, even though it's very risky to not be full time. But at least I'm grateful that my back doesn't hurt. I'm grateful that my feet don't hurt and my knees don't hurt. And I'm not saying that they will be healthy forever, but at least I am taking the steps to ensure that I don't break myself down physically so early. Like most people who I know who have medical issues, their issues started in their early 30s. You know what that is? Like you're only 30 years old and you already have had knee replacement and you are taking so many drugs for like pain and stuff, and you cannot bend down to pick stuff up from like the lowest shelf. Why is that okay? Have some respect. So anyway, I guess those kinds of decisions, it really depends how you look at it, because I don't want to sound like I'm superior to these people. Quite the contrary, I guess I'm inferior since I'm voluntarily making decisions to put myself, say, at a disadvantage financially and not having, what is it, work sponsored health insurance and whatnot. But at least I said, you cannot buy whatever little bit of dignity I have. I like to admit that I'm a human being with weaknesses and I could push through and expose myself to all those things, but I don't want to because I'm not thinking about right now. I'm thinking about the future, which only gets bleaker. So it's okay to make decisions that look like you're being pushed back, but as long as you stick to a plan, everything will be okay. And I have faith that with my case, everything will be okay. And if it isn't, oh well, I guess I can spread the word and be like, hey, these are the decisions that I made. I regret it, and this is why. Being a teacher is just as valuable as having successful experience. You sharing your failed experiences are as valuable as successes. Let us know why you failed. But anyway, enough rambling on that department. Let me see, where am I at? Oh, I guess I missed that. Skunk is a variety of weed rich with delta 9 tetrahydrocannabinol. Huh. Interesting. Let's see. Oh, I learned to debate from debating and using reverse psychology and baiting people into contradicting themselves. Thanks. I will rewatch the stream and leave a comment on the vid. If I am with a woman who went to pursue her career, I would follow her and help her build only if we are in a relationship to build a strong family and maybe an empire. I am traditional. See, I yearn a relationship in which we're both building so badly, because every single goddamn relationship I have been in has always been the guy is in his own little world, working for himself, with himself, on himself. And I'm thinking, what's the point of us being together? Why are we not putting our resources together and making something work? Sometimes I feel like the guy is using his resourcefulness, resource superiority against me and being like, oh, there's no way that I could join my resources with you because your resources are much insignificant compared to mine. And I'm thinking, well, at least I got stuff to contribute, but you haven't given me the chance to demonstrate that. So that, in a sense, is something that I resent about all of my relationships. But at the same time, I see that deep down they mean well, but they're not keeping in mind the fact that we are different. So the way that you can work and have tolerance to work and hustle away and stuff like that to gather your stuff is not necessarily compatible with me. And that shouldn't be held against me. But I feel like if I were demonstrating that I am irresponsible with my bills, that I'm irresponsible with meeting deadlines and showing up to work, and I get disciplinary action every day or something, or often or something, then okay, definitely hold that against me and something like that. But someone who has like a relatively impeccable record and like you're still having that attitude, it's just weird to me. But but if I had a guy who's like that, who like is like, you know what, I know that I am ahead of you, but it doesn't matter. Whatever it is that you're trying to do, let's get to it together. Let's build it together. I would become real life Wonder Woman if that happened. But I feel like, unfortunately, the modern man did not have a father figure to show them what it's like to have a relationship teamwork. And boy, has that bitten me, because although I grew up daddyless, I do feel like I have relationship values well defined. And I've just been so unfulfilled, and I just sometimes not know what to do. Sometimes I think I should go whatever the word for woman Tao is, but then I think it's really not the men's fault. It's the fault of those who brought him up to be a failure with relationships. So I like to recur to my most admirable weapon, which I believe is my patience. And I feel like I have patience for the wrong reasons, but at least the more I hone it, I think the more likely I am to set myself up for success, because a lot of things about life have to do with how you react to it and your level of patience. And I know the definition of an impatient person, and that doesn't make matters better. So my goal is to at least not struggle with that, if that makes any sense. Um, get a prenuptial agreement. I want to know if she loves me, or if she's in it for the money. If she signs prenatal agreement, then prenatal, then I know she won't be thinking about what she can take from me. That makes sense. I personally feel like the sole fact that you're getting married to someone should mean that you will execute the vows. But if you're going to get married and somehow be like, to hell with the vows, don't get fucking married, you know? But unfortunately, there are people out there who use that for that reason, which is to like take things. Let's see, where am I at? I really hate that this thing scrolls back to the bottom when a comment gets posted, so then I have to like look for the stopping place. I think the law is, even if the wife brings home no bacon, half of everything goes to her in divorce. Yeah, only because she has kids. So they're thinking about the fact that she's going to end up getting custody, even though she is not in the best position to have custody. But we will do so just to ensure that the kids stay with the mother, because for some reason, I don't think science backs this up, but for some reason we think that kids are guaranteed to be better with their moms. What if the mom is just batshit crazy? We have stories of women who just ain't good mothers, and they end up with all the responsibility for the kids. Why? That's insane. You are endangering the kids just because you prefer females, because that is the precedent that has been established. Why? Just why? So a female is not required to work. She can manage my money, account it, and build my hard work's money to establish a family. I don't need an empire. I just need a family. Everything goes to children, not the woman. True. Oh crap, I guess I skipped all of that. Curious, is that a shirt or a comfy bathrobe? This is actually a bathrobe, but underneath I have a shirt and I am cooking. And what's weird is I'm wearing a bathrobe even though I haven't taken a shower. But this is more of I'm at home, I never wear this, and it really helps me sleep better as of lately because it's cozy and I don't have winter stuff out yet. And the nights have been getting really cold. It makes sense. It's like toward the end of September now. But yeah, it's something I never wear. So I said, why not? Um yeah, this was a terrible idea because I have long sleeves and I am actually sweating underneath this. I am old school. I believe men and women are yin and yang. We are not equal but magnetic opposites. I rather take care of a female and we build a family. For me, it is not a female bringing home resources, wasting away working. It is about a female doing stuff to take our money I make into building a family. I am not saying a female should stay home. I am just saying I don't need a female to be in the work field. I want her to be free so she can become an entrepreneur to hold me down later down the line. And that makes an absolute load of sense. But unfortunately, in modern days, we have taken that definition and we have turned it into my man has to take care of me. And you know what's something that really, really, really irritates me? You are a single mother and you are looking for a relationship. And let's say that you are discussing with a girl what you're looking for in a guy. You know what some of these people say? They say, I want for my guy to be a good provider. Why? It's not his kids. But I understand that men naturally you take care of the village pretty much. You see a woman, she's vulnerable, you contribute no matter what, you help whether you are related or not. But for you to have the audacity of expecting that from a guy, what's in it for him? You know? And now I guess men are thinking about relationships more from a perspective of what do I gain from this? And then the women get upset that the men aren't really looking for relationships like that anymore because they would rather just enjoy what they have worked for. Because remember that in the same manner that life is complicated in general for the average person, an average guy still has a tough life. So it's not really there really is no incentive for guys to be involved in relationships these days. And it really sucks because I think that relationships are amazing. They're great. They're good for you. But for most of us, it's turned into such a stressful, frustrating, unworthy thing. And now we have so many like repressed feelings and whatnot. And that's why if people do crazy things, I don't blame them. I understand how they arrived at that situation. It's not right, but it is a symptom of a bigger problem. But in the end, I really think that you should at least be considerate, be helpful, be useful, and do not assume that what a guy is working for, you're entitled to. Even if we have the Garudas out there who are like, yeah, you manage my resources and whatnot. Let's face it, some people do not have discipline. Some people aren't good at that. They get carried away. People like that cannot be trusted. And I think that they need to have limits. So definitely do not be afraid to have like a main bank account on the side that only you have access to, and then let her have like a significantly smaller percentage, but keep it growing, but at least the loss is more contained, it's more manageable. Because man, there are people who make terrible decisions and it undoes all of your progress from like 30 years, and you just lose it all in one bad decision. That's not fair for anybody. And Yep, I'd rather be in the work field and she use my money to take care of the cubs and become an entrepreneur. That way we can both build. It is team effort, my yin and yang opposite, me holding her down and she be free to hold me down later in life. Yeah, that's pretty much you planting the seed for the future, which all of the decisions that you make should keep the future in mind. But the way our culture works is we have been rewired, reconfigured into thinking in a now kind of way, like immediate gratification. There is absolutely no planning, no patience, just everything is immediate. I want it now. And I think that is part of the bigger problem with our society. Anyway, moving forth, the next question is parents should not pierce babies' ears. Now, this one is rather interesting. I never gave this much thought, but I was one of those babies who got her ears pierced whenever it became safe to do so, I guess. And I'm happy about that because I guess my mom looked at it as, well, she's a girl, and more than likely she's going to be inclined for fashion stuff. So why not? And interestingly enough, I go months now without wearing earrings. And I actually like earrings. I want to say they're my favorite accessory. But when it comes to that, I really don't care really. I think that if you have a girl, more than likely they will want for their ears to be pierced. But I have met girls who have never had them pierced and they say that they don't care to have them pierced. That's all right, but I think that if you do it as a baby, it's better because I have no recollection of getting my ears pierced. But then I got a second hole in my left ear and I don't want to say I regret it, but it was just not a cool experience to be aware of that discomfort and pain when that was happening. So I think females definitely mutilate their ears when they're babies. And then for the guys, I haven't met a guy in my life who says, I wish my mom would have pierced my ears when I was a baby. If a guy wants piercings, they just get them. No complaints. So I don't think that's really a big debate here. I really think that girls should get them pierced because you will fall victim to the fashion industry at some point, and at least that's out of the way. But if you don't want to indulge in it, you can still have your ears pierced, but don't indulge in the fashion industry. You know, that's simple. You have choice. But I understand that this question is about making choices for your children on their behalf when they don't have a say in it quite yet. But I personally am grateful that I got my ears pierced. So what? I'm not the best person to ask, I guess. Women should be allowed to go topless in public. Now, I really have a strong opinion about this one, and it's about decency. I just don't think that breasts just going around unrestricted is a pretty sight. I don't want to see that. I don't like seeing that. And me personally, it's uncomfortable to not have something restricting their movement. I honestly think that female tits are gross. There, I said it. I don't want to see that shit. Whereas guys, though, you all have like a flat chest. Nothing strange or disturbing comes out of that. And besides, unfortunately, female breasts tend to be like a heavily intimate sexual item. I don't need to see that. I just fucking don't. You know? It doesn't mean that I hate my body. It doesn't mean that I what can I say? That I'm disturbed by it. It's just not what I want to see. And I honestly think that it's gross. And if you're like, say, a female who's milking a baby, I haven't seen what that looks like, but I am sure that the secretions can look disturbing. So, in conclusion, I feel like the way things are currently is fine. I am not oppressed by the fact that I cannot go topless in public. I'm actually grateful. But again, what can I say? It's just one of those things that you want to have a double standard so bad, but you just shouldn't. You just cannot. Just don't do it because it's fucking nasty. I'm not going to lie there. I don't like that. I don't like it. And I guess it's a good thing that I don't like it. I guess it reinforces my sexuality. Like I'm just straight like that. So I'm not thinking about female breasts like that. And if you guys want to hear something I consider this funny, maybe it's not funny for you guys, but I guess my disgust for female breasts is something that I was born with because my mom tells me that when I was a baby, she tried breastfeeding me and I fucking rejected her tits. Like she had the toughest time feeding me, breastfeeding me, because she kept saying, "Man, I used to get you to attach your face to it and you just were not having it." And as she was telling me the story, I was like, "Gay, gay, gay." So like I was like, "See, because I don't like you like that, you know." But I think it was funny that she said that, and of course I turned it into a joke. That's definitely not how things work. Of course, I guess the more scientific explanation for what was happening to me, from what mom understands, is that I did not have a suckling reflex. I think is what they call it. So my grandma, paternal grandma, was a nurse, and she was the one who gave mom some tips and advice on how to, I guess, stimulate me into feeling attracted to that. For feeding purposes, of course. And when mom told me that, I had no idea because I thought that that's something that you're just born with. You're just born knowing that you had to suck mom's tits and, survive that way. But then I had another friend tell me that he too was born without a suckling reflex. And I think, oh, and you're a guy. You're a guy and you rejected your mom's tits. That's awesome because I did too. But yeah, it. I think that female breasts are something that have a different meaning. It's just an intimate. Let's call it an object. It's an intimate object, and I don't think it belongs being exposed in public. And hopefully, my explanation of it makes sense to you and you understand that it's not that I have a hatred for the female body in any way. It's just that it doesn't click in me. Let's see. I was born in 86. I refuse to let society change my family values and my way of thinking about majestic females who want to build, who are not established. I am not shallow. I wish I knew more 80s folks like you because, damn, I have been judged severely. And honestly, you saying that helps reinforce in my mind that there's nothing wrong with me because although I am aware of how much we live in a hurried society and how women are expected to go out there and work because we wanted that equality, right? So now we have to suffer the consequences for it. I I really miss the way things were, even though I was not born for that time. When I hear the stories of my grandparents and how they lived and how they made it, I'm like, you lived in paradise, even if you don't realize it. You don't realize it because you don't know what it's like to not have that familial development. Like, you don't know what it's like to be looking for relationships that just function. Yours did because they were pure, and men had their roles in society defined, and women, even though we looked at it as we were oppressed, we had our role in our society defined. And it wasn't necessarily wrong. It's just that some of us, that kind of lifestyle wasn't compatible with our energy levels, I guess, to try to find a reasonable explanation. I don't know what motivated women, for instance, to like create all these revolutions. I'm not saying I'm not enjoying some of the benefits of like what came out of those revolutions, but there are some things that have really set us back. And I kind of resent some of that because I did not enjoy the development that the, let's call it, the more vintage woman had, and I feel like they're more superior to me. The only thing I have an advantage of is my understanding of just technology. But in the grand scheme of things, that's not very meaningful. I'm not qualified to manage a house with children, for instance, whereas they, by age 17 or so, they got stuff going, you know? I cannot say I could do that. I would be overwhelmed. So I feel like I have lost some of my relationship with myself as a female. Put it that way. Let me catch up with the comments. A female who is working to build means nothing to me. I just need her to be yin and yang. Frida Nips. I figured that you would say Frida Nips. I like the way you think, but nudity doesn't bother me as much as you. For example, if a woman wants to go topless, it doesn't bother me. I guess I could say it wouldn't bother me if we had like an environmental situation that warranted it, like say, I don't know, clothes for some reason are making you sick and you need to remove them. Okay, fine. But I guess it bothers me because I'm female and I'm thinking, sure, guys shirtless is a great sight, but I guess for me it boils down to the fact that I was always encouraged to show respect to my body, and part of it has to do with covering it up. And on top of that, the way I present myself matters because if you go around nude, that may send off a wrong message. And I guess to put it in more, what is it, severe terms, I'm not a hoe. And I'm not saying that nudity is equivalent to you being that, but I'm just saying that I wouldn't appreciate my man going around exhibiting his body. I'm pretty sure that he would not appreciate me exhibiting my body. So I guess depending on what your circumstances are and what stage in life you're in, there are some things that you just shouldn't do. Certain behaviors you shouldn't get yourself involved in, especially if you want to be taken seriously. But that's just my opinion. Like the way that I may take someone seriously may differ vastly from the next person, and that's okay. But I feel like that is part of respect, and to me, respect is the most important thing. And I feel like if I start off by respecting myself and respecting my body, then I am more in a better position to give and receive respect. So why not? That's what I think about. Lawyers should make higher salaries than nurses. This question was odd for me because I thought they don't. I don't know what lawyers make. I don't know how much nurses make, but that honestly doesn't bother me. I don't understand the role of a lawyer as well as I feel I should. So, on that one, I really don't have an opinion. I really think that everyone should be paid fairly and accordingly. And as long as you get paid a living wage, I don't care how much you make. And as long as the wages that you're making or the salary that you make does not create disparities in societies, I don't care. I just don't. So that's pretty much all I have to say on that one. Reading English is more difficult than writing it. This was an interesting question. It goes kind of on par with the earlier question about studying grammar is more important than conversation skills. But I personally think that reading it is easier if you read it in your mind. And if you have good reading skills, you should be okay. But when it comes to writing it, I want to say that writing it has the potential of being more difficult only because you need to be able to dominate grammar to be a good reader. Because if you ever see a word that you're not familiar with and it sounds similar to another word, you may misunderstand the meaning. Like earlier, I posted a video about Dusty, the word need and need. Which one is the necessity word and which one is the act that the cat is performing? You know, the needing thing. So if you were to read that in your mind, maybe you would misinterpret a sentence. You might be, the cat needs on the owner. Does that mean that you're like the cat is performing its little massage therapy, or it needs from the owner? Like it has needs from the owner. So, yeah, if I think about it that way, reading English is more difficult. But if you're reading something that someone already went through the trouble of understanding the grammar and building that content in written form for you to simply caress with your eyes and absorb the content, is it really more difficult? I really think that writing it can be more difficult because writing it means that you are the creator of the content. You have to ensure that you are good with your words, good with your sentence structure, you are good at thinking, and you're also good at possibly anticipating the many ways that your content can be interpreted, because there is a possibility for misinterpretation if you do not have strong writing skills. See what I mean? So I think that reading may be more difficult only if you are trying to read something that by nature is challenging. Like, I cannot expect to be good at, say, reading chemistry to exclusively learn the way of a chemist from reading to go on a lab and apply what I have learned if my source material is not very well structured. And on top of that, it shouldn't be my responsibility to learn how to science without an instructor, a living, breathing, physical instructor. But I really think that writing it can be more challenging because you need to make sure that you have a good structure with the way you communicate. And that is something that not everybody dominates. Because you ever try to chat with someone over messaging or something, and you have the toughest time understanding this person, or you misinterpret them because either they don't put effort into their grammar or their answers are very short for something that's mildly complex. And you think that this person is painfully unimaginative, but it turns out that they simply do not dominate the art of writing because they are better speakers. So, that question, I don't want to absolutely stamp it as I disagree, but I want to say that writing it is more difficult for the aforementioned. You guys let me know. What's your opinion? What do you think? And then the next one is summer is the best season. And that is fucking false because summer is the worst time for me. I always get the worst skin rashes. I hate the sun. I hate the heat. The heat puts me in a bad mood. Everything spoils faster. And my water doesn't stay cold as long. I have to run the air conditioner. Summer's just miserable. But winter can also be challenging. Winter is only bad when my skin gets really dry and I am craving wearing t-shirts and not wearing long sleeves. But that is definitely a heavily opinionated question. Spring is the best season, matter of factly. So let me catch up with the comments and continue from there. For example, if a woman wants to go topless, it doesn't matter to me. And Garuda has donated $10. Thank you. That's so sweet of you. Yeah. When it comes to summer, yeah, that's really the best I can think of. I've never liked the summer, even though I was born in the summer. I've never liked the summer. I'm not a summer person at all. Children under 13 shouldn't be allowed to babysit. See, it has benefits from the perspective of you are exposing a child to have experience at dealing with children from a very young age. And if they get paid for it, because say you're babysitting the neighbor's child and they pay you for it, hey, you're you're learning how to make money, right? But I also think it's a negative thing because as I have mentioned a couple of times now, the hurried child, the hurried child society. Why are you depositing such a significant responsibility on a child? What if something happens? There's an emergency. This child is bleeding. This child is asthmatic. This child is diabetic. This child is there's a lot that could potentially go wrong, and that should not be the responsibility of a child under 13 to deal with. And on top of that, you are the parent. You are the one who has this child. Why are you entrusting another child who needs help? They need their own parents to look after your kid. So, from the experiential point of view, as long as you're not alone and you are coached into babysitting, that's fine. But to 100% be, say, you are, let's say you're 10 years old and you're looking after a 4-year-old, I don't think that's appropriate. But, I mean, my brother and I used to stay home alone, and he's almost 6 years older than me. Nothing went wrong, but stuff could have gone wrong now that I think about it. But at least mom was a very good coach. She was good at teaching, raising kids. I mean, she's a freaking teacher. But I see things that could potentially go wrong here. And I really think that some children may not deal very well with having such a responsibility. Fall is my favorite. Oh, well, I guess lucky you, because your season is coming. I agree you should wait till at least 13 to babysit. Yeah, I think 13 is a better age. I remember how I used to be when I was 13. I definitely had more complex thinking, but I feel like a better age would be definitely 14, but I think the ideal age to begin serious babysitting would be between 16 and 17. And if you're 18, even better, because then you're an adult. And let's say, not that I encourage you to administer medication of any sort on anybody who you don't know, but if you're 18, at least if you were to need to buy something from a pharmacy that you need to show your ID for, for an emergency. A, you can drive, hopefully, and B, you can buy these things. So you're more than likely to be more resourceful during an emergency. And I'm not saying that emergencies just happen often out of the blue because life sucks, but they do happen. So when they happen, why wouldn't you want to be prepared? Your mom sounds amazing. She is. High schoolers should wear uniforms. No, only because, but who's gonna pay for it? Well, more from the perspective of I don't see how uniforms are beneficial. I think that uniforms can help to establish classes a little better, as in not let that affect children's psychology. Because, like, when you have a free dress code, you may have the rich kids who are wearing the fancier brands, and then that gives ideas to the poorer kids to feel inferior to these folks, and they need to somehow indulge on that stuff. And that creates an inferiority complex, as opposed to just looking at it as, hey, at least I show up to school with clothes. Doesn't matter what the brand is. What matters is I have fabric covering my epidermis. That's the way I used to look at it. I was never obsessed with the fancy brands or anything. The only time I became obsessed with a brand was my backpack. I definitely went for one of those LL Bean ones when I was like in 11th grade. And I'm only sad that I didn't go for it sooner, only because that turned out to be the backpack that lasted more than a year and a half for me. So if I make a $45 investment on an item that's going to last me 7 years, which is how long I had my first backpack before the seam for the straps and the back started to like fall apart. Had I known that, I'm like, wow, I could have saved my mom between $15 and $20 every single school year, for at least 7 years if I would have told her, hey, this backpack is very resistant. And if you spend these $45 now, you're probably going to save, I can't do math, but you potentially can save over $100 in the course of 7 years, which doesn't sound like a lot, but not all backpacks were made the same. Some backpacks only lasted me one semester. And at least mom wasn't terribly tight on money, but she wasn't in the best shape either. So had I known that I could have helped her sooner with my school expenses, then definitely. But I think that the uniform thing is more of a psychological thing. I don't think it teaches you how to dress for certain situations. I think that in school you should be taught how to dress based on the occasion. Like, how do you dress for an interview? How do you dress for going to the gym? Which that should be obvious, but there are some things that are more proper than others. How do you dress for a funeral? How do you dress for a family reunion? How do you dress for like an important speech or something? Be taught casual from business, from personal life, stuff like that. I think that would be the benefit from it. But I think you shouldn't force people to invest in uniforms, especially if every year the uniform may change, you know? But but yeah, I think uniforms do not keep you safer, do not keep you healthier, do not protect you from anything except maybe psychologically, but I think that education is what matters the most. And I am regretting not turning on my light now. The schoolgirl look is cool, but you should not be forced to wear it. Exactly. And let's face it, uniforms are not always practical because you have to iron them. They have different pieces, different parts, and the number of uniforms is limited. What if I break one of them or rip one of them in PE or something? I should be allowed to wear things that are appropriate for the situation. I cannot imagine having been as happy in school being forced to wear a uniform. And then the last question is, should the government pay for post secondary education? There is so much that the damn government should pay for. But to answer this question and attempt to focus on just this question, yeah, why not? The resources are there. If you invest in the education of the men and women of the future and relatively contemporary, wouldn't society become better? You want people to have better jobs, be better skilled, especially for the changing times, as opposed to having to depend on, what can I say, shipping talent from other countries and sponsoring them as a company to come over here, which that has its own expenses. What's more expensive? Hiring someone foreign who has skills and giving them a visa sponsored by the company, or hire Americans? Because I know that you have like your tax on employees. So there are some companies who are actually not encouraged, like incentivized to hire American workers from how expensive it is to hire American workers for some reason. But but again, I think education is something that is a moral responsibility, a moral obligation to provide. And I don't see why people having to choose between that or foregoing it is right. Because, for instance, take me for example, I actively decided against college. Why? Because when I was 17, I was under a lot of stress, and my stress did not allow me to focus on college. And one of the things that made it not have an incentive for me was I didn't know what I wanted to do. I wasn't sure that what I wanted to do was right for me. And I feel like I could benefit from doing more shadowing. Like, the natural sciences have always been my interest. That didn't mean that I wanted to be out in the field making a living from being in the field. So, how about if I'm allowed to shadow it with more time to make decisions and not having to worry about final exams and taking challenging courses so that I can get college credit and bump down the college sticker price, and also worry about applying for colleges and applying for scholarships and the stress of the first rejections that you get. Like, say, the college you're excited about rejects you, just like the job that you're excited about rejects you, or the guy that I'm going after rejects me, or in the case of you guys, the girl that you are going after rejects you. That takes a psychological toll. And I feel like we are so, again, hurried in this society that we don't think about that. We try to numb that. And then we get older and we resent the fact that we didn't really enjoy ourselves during that time. So I decided against college because I was not in a good mental position to be making that kind of decision. And I think that my parents, not just my mom, parents, needed to be more involved at that, because this is a life changing decision. How am I going to pay for my post secondary education? I had absolutely no plan for that. And sure, even if I got scholarships, and probably I was going to be approved for a lot of them because a lot of them were looking for women, preferably who were going into the sciences and whatnot. But that is not a guarantee that my cost would be manageable. Because in the end, I was still going to graduate with debt. And honestly, my mindset is not competitive. I don't feel like I do not have competitiveness in me. I just do not operate in a competitive mindset. I do not care about proving that I have the best ideas, competing against somebody else for a position, for the number one spot, because in the end, those things don't matter. When I die, none of that is coming with me. And I really thought that I want to try to create something. I had no idea what, but I did not want to be condemned to, sure, I'm getting all these degrees and credentials to benefit somebody else, to help somebody else's wealth. What about mine? What about my dreams? Why do I have to depend on a company for those things? I think some things are just really basic that should be fulfillable no matter where you go, where you're at, who you are, how old you are. It should be a basic thing. But our society doesn't think that way anymore. But anyway, in the end, I think that the government could do more for us, should do more for us, whether it gets labeled as a socialist government or communist government. To me, the government should respect its citizens. And I personally feel like our government in this country doesn't respect its citizens. It only respects you if you meet certain criteria. It likes to look at who you are, what your title is, what your contributions are, what your privilege is, just stuff like that. And that's not fair. You should just love your country, men, period. Focus on the issues at home, and then you can try to branch out into more international issues. But as long as we have issues that persist at home, you shouldn't be worried about the issues of other places. Like, I'm not saying don't help others at all, don't be a good host, but again, do not redirect all of our resources to other folks when we got problems at home. That's like saying, let's say that my parents are both in this house living together and I'm back to being a little girl with my brother, but my father decides to go to someone else's house to help raise their kids and he's not taking care of his kids, and my mom, being a teacher, decides to redirect her resources to the needy children in her classroom, and then her home children are actually being neglected. So I think you need to make sure that your home is well established, firm, sturdy, robust, all those things, and then branch out. You can do a little bit here and there to like alleviate some people's challenges. I'm not saying don't help others at all, but I'm saying do so with moderation. I agree with you on this one. Free higher learning would be great. The choice not to attend college is probably a good one for you, as it was for me too. Yeah, I hear all these people. Like, recently, I had a friend of mine who was actually my former supervisor. She is in her 40s. And only some months ago did she pay off her student loans from like when she was in her early 20s. How is being in a 20-year debt acceptable? It makes no sense to me. I support a female getting higher education. That is different from I wanted wife. That is why I graduate or gravitate to you as a male. I find that impressive and beautiful. I served in the military and am an active truck driver in the USA. I am not from the USA. I never get recognition for being the backbone of USA and international civilians. I see. I don't think I knew that about you. It doesn't sound familiar. That was another thing. I was told, well, if you don't go to college, at least go into the military. And I said, why? That's not compatible with me at all. I'm not saying that the military cannot offer useful skills for me, but what I'm saying is that based on my personality, that kind of environment is not the best for me. Well, guys, that's pretty much it from me. That is the end of the questions and definitely the end of my thoughtful contributions. And on top of that, it's getting dark. I should definitely snack on something, take a shower, and kind of prepare for tomorrow because I have a long ass shift and it's Sunday in retail. It's gonna suck. It's gonna be merciless. It's gonna be brutal. And I just want to be as well rested as possible. And yeah, I've been making that a bigger priority. Getting more rest, taking a little bit more time off, I guess. Time off from certain things, not work like I wish I could, but at least be a little more selfish at that and be like, no, I come first. My well being come first, which I wasn't always like that. And I've been feeling better. I've been happier. My energy is more positive. I deal with stressful situations and news better. And overall, I just have more energy. And yeah, it means that some things are tougher for me, but at least I feel happier. And may not be in the channel quite as often, but I'm always thinking about it. I'm always trying to do something here. But I'll also try to take it a little slow too and be like, let me put myself out there when I have something that I'm very excited about. Because at some point, I was kind of, I don't want to say I was grinding away because that's never the intent with this channel, but I just felt like every time I started recording something, I wanted to start venting and bitching and moaning and crying and complaining about the stuff going on in my life because I had, I should say, a lot of resentment for the things that were going on with me. And I was like, nah, this is not who I am. I need to like resolve this and then come back. And yeah, I feel better, more confident, and just overall better. And also physically, I can do this because at some point I was like coughing a lot and sneezing a lot and dying from like the cousin of the Rona, I guess. I don't know what the hell I had, but I was sick. And it was not a good condition to be like here, you know? But anyway, I'm always around. Just bear with me. You have a beautiful mind. Hope to see you again soon. Keep healthy. I appreciate that, and definitely I will be around. I'll try to go live more often, and definitely put videos out more often because I really love doing this. But lately, I just did not have a good way of implementing it into my life, given that I was trying to juggle other things and then some issues that came up at home that needed my absolute attention. But at least I think that stuff has been resolved, not just have a band-aid over it. It's been resolved. But anyway, so you guys should perceive the changes rather soon. To explain a higher education, I dropped out of school in my second year in high school. I got my GED. When I went into the military, these high school kids were laughing at me. Turned out I had a higher IQ than them. You know, it makes sense. You can have many degrees and stuff, but the customers who struggle the most at the grocery store actually tend to be respectable people who are older with degrees and shit. They might be rich or something. And I'm thinking, how are you living such a powerful and privileged life and you don't know how to read the sale sign? You know? But anyway, that may be a symptom of another problem too. Finishing my GED, then they had from 12th grade graduates. And you know what? I feel like if you go to school at a later time, that actually gives you an edge because you have developed yourself emotionally and mentally, and you have the maturity to absorb certain topics that when you were younger you just could not get. I feel like school would be more effective if it wasn't in such a static environment. You know, like if you're talking to me about social studies, make sure that we get to visit the mayor or something at some point in our lives and talk to them and ask them questions and talk about corruption, talk about what their priorities are and why they are like that. And if you're going into the sciences, let's do more real, actual, beneficial experiments as opposed to the little ass things that we do, you know? I'm not saying let's change the world as students, but why not? You know? So yeah, I think that we need a major reform when it comes to education because I feel like from middle school to high school, I feel like all of that time was just a fucking waste. But maybe I don't see it now, but I really feel that way. Do you have a favorite color? You know what? My my color preferences have been shifting a bit, but ever since I was a kid and until presently, I still gravitate toward it. It's navy. So I guess blue is the color and navy is the hue. But lately, I've been having a thing for more blush, red ish, ruby ish colors. But yeah, navy is always a safe color for me. My top colors are navy, dark green, and black. Usually in that order. But navy is always number one. School would be more effective if they teach kids about real world life. I dropped out of school to live in the real world. I have a higher IQ. Yeah, definitely, because experiential learning is better than controlled learning, if you ask me. Also, teach kids how to react during certain situations. Let them know that not everything is going to be perfect, not everything is going to be flowers and dandelions, and that in case of emergency, for example, if you see someone on fire in front of you, how do you react? There are some things that I think about that I'm like, I would not know what to do in that situation. But the most important thing is that I know to not freak the fuck out. Freaking out never helps. All right, guys. Well, I appreciate you so much for being here. Thank you so, so much. I really enjoyed my time here today. And I'll see you soon.